Hey everybody, there would be nobody else that we would want to interview for our first formal The Pedlar Team interview. We're going to start doing these on a little more routine basis, and just to bring, we're going to cover real estate, local entrepreneurs, local counselors, politicians, teachers, just to give you more information on our local neighborhood and what's going on in Grand Bend and area, Lambton Shores, North Middlesex, Blue Water. But really important, and probably our best excuse to start this, was to have Doug is celebrating 40 years in the real estate industry. So we thought this would be an awesome first interview to do to start our Pedlar Team series interviews off.
That's good.
So what we got is a nice display. This is our first valiant effort of a display. So we'll talk about these moving forward, but Dad, I think to start us off, why don't you give us where you grew up, give us a little bit about your childhood, growing up, high school, all that kind of stuff.
Sure, I grew up in Parkhill, not very far from Grand Bend, and we used to come out to Grand Bend all the time as kids and teenagers in the area, and always enjoyed, being around the Great Lakes. We went to Ipperwash. I worked at the Sauble Conservation Authority at the Cut in my 14, 15s. And so I always liked the area. And we'd always come in from Parkhill on the weekends, come into Grand Bend and walk up and down the street and go at the roller rink and, cottages around Grand Bend. So it's always been part of, when I grew up, it was always Grand Bend where you went to.
And it is funny, you say the roller rink is how many buyers I talk to that are your age group that also bring up the roller rink or the good old days of Grand Bend. And maybe we'll have to ask you for a couple stories about that.
I don't have too many stories. It used to be lined up watching everybody go around the road. There'd be 8 to 10 people thick on Saturday nights.
And it's where in town?
It's where kombucha is.
Where the kombucha place is.
And the rink's still there in the back of the parking lot. So.
Oh, it's the parking lot.
Yeah, and when you go back behind the old oak tree, that you go into that, is it a Mexican restaurant?
Yeah,
the big old
La
oak.
Playita.
Yeah, the old oak tree is where you used to sit and put your skates on and meet people underneath the oak tree. So it's still there. Jeannette and I would go there for dinner once in a while, and I always thought it was kind of funny. But no, Grand Bend's always been, everybody came to the beach. So,
growing up only 15 kilometers away in Parkhill, what was it? I know the story, but I want you to tell. Going off to your first big trip in high school, off to Ecuador.
Oh, I was an exchange student in 1970. We had. An opportunity because in 1969, Javier Negrete from Guayaquil came and was an exchange student here at the high school, and I was in grade 10, 11, 12, 11, and he came for 3 months, but he wanted to stay the whole year to get his year schooled in, so they put a little ad out, and Mom said, oh, we can take Harvey, one boy around the house would be better with 3 girls. My 3 sisters, so Javier came to live with us for 6 months, and then the International Youth Hostel, whatever it's called, they said, well, if you'd like to send one of your kids down, and I volunteered my time. In 1970, I went down to Ecuador for 3 months and lived with Javier down there, so it was quite an experience. That got me traveling.
And Dad's told me a couple stories about down there. In 1970, Ecuador wasn't the most safest place. So Dad had like gates around the whole house.
Oh yeah,
you
gates.
Couldn't go out by yourself.
When we landed in Guayaquil at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, that day the president claimed himself a dictator.
I remember.
So you could probably figure out what day I landed there. Like it'd be June or something, 1st, 2nd. No, maybe it was June, July. But whatever day we land there, the president who was elected claimed himself a dictator. So there's little rioting going downtown, which is comprised of maybe 100 people. with placards down on the main street of Guayaquil. I never did see that. We didn't go down there anyways. We just played tennis for a couple months
saying this.
and traveled around and went around to stores selling stuff with the brothers. They sold makeup, scotch to different people, and his dad owned Quaker Oats, and he used to get Quaker Oats come in to Ecuador and then ship bananas back out. And he was the manager of the place, so he did really well. He made good money, and the average wage was $250 a year in Ecuador in 1970. So
Thankfully, we've come a long ways.
yeah, quite a way. So they came back after that, and then
And you're how old when you did that?
18.
Okay.
So I think I went back to grade 13 my last year of school.
In
Parkhill.
in 1970, grade 13 was still a thing. It has only just gone away 10 years ago. So he's not aging himself by saying grade 13. And then you were home for a couple years back in Parkhill, working with Grandpa around the gas station and W's Dairy Dip.
Well, I was doing that since I was 13.
Okay, you resumed that position.
Well, I went to University of Western for a couple years, and then decided to go out west skiing. And
Before you take off out west, how did you get into skiing? You've told me this story, but this is a funny one.
we used to ski at the Pinery Provincial Park,
Yeah.
which is just down the road here when I was 15, 16, and Mom used to take us out on Saturday night, I think, with Robert Gray. I remember there's 2 or 3 buddies, and we'd go down on our old skis with the cable bindings, make about, the hill was maybe 5 turns you make from top to bottom. It had a pommel lift, and it's still there. It's beside the toboggan where everybody goes up and down the toboggan run. It's on the right-hand side, and it was fun. You learned how to ski. Well, you learned how to ski, kind of, but we go out there on the weekends when there was snow. Mom would take us there, yeah. It was sort of, I thought for some reason it was mainly nights, because Friday and Saturday night, because on Sunday, it was just packed with skiing. That's where they skied, the Pinery Park.
So that's where you did, it was like a couple 100 feet, the hill, pretty small.
Yeah, I think the vertical is
100 feet.
100 feet, maybe 2.
And then fast forward out to BC.
So I went out to BC.
And what brought you to BC originally was an acquaintance or
An
a
acquaintance
friend.
from university. A friend went out there, and they were going to go skiing. So I said, "Oh, well, I'll come out." First of all, Dad wanted me to work with him. He was a gas distributor at Texaco, and so it was September, and I decided I wasn't going to go back to school. And he said, "Well, come on out with me, or come with me and take over my gas business." So I ran it helped him, and drove the gas truck for about 3 months. I said, "Yeah, I don't think this is what I want to do." So I went out west and skiing, and that spring I got a job with a surveyor out in BC. Monty Exton was his name, and he actually still is. His company's still out in Williams Lake. So I went to see my Uncle Art in Dawson Creek. One day I was supposed to help a farmer. It was May 24th weekend. It snowed 2 feet. So I decided to get out of Dawson Creek, hitchhike down to Williams Lake, because I had a friend from university that lived in Williams Lake. Went into the job office the next day, and by 12 o'clock I had a job working for a surveyor. So I worked with Monty for the year, and then went skiing. And then when that year of skiing was over, I went down to Roslyn to go skiing for the winter. And when I wanted to come back and work with him, which I thought I liked it, he said, "Oh, I don't have a lot of work, but I have a guy that's looking for a surveyor." So I got a job with Ducks Unlimited as a surveyor, and then I was there for 7, 8, 9 years, somewhere in there, doing survey the first year and a half. Then I was a construction supervisor. We built dams and water controls for ducks, so that when the the droughts came in the interior of BC, that the minimum water would be there, so the ducks would have nesting islands or nesting places to nest, so that their nesting areas wouldn't dry up. So we worked in all over the interior of BC. Out of Williams Lake, I was up to the Priest River and out to Masset on the Queen Charlotte Islands. I was working down in the North Delta, down Vancouver. We got down to Kamloops, out in the Chilcotin, out to Alexa Creek, Bella Coola. So, and then, so within those 7 or 8 years, I was, mainly doing construction, but I'd like water dams and water controls. And one big ranch that we worked in was Chilco Ranch, which is still there. It was 1.2 million acres, the ranch, of deeded land. Maybe they'd own 200,000, but 1 million acres they would lease for their cattle to run in. And that's why the cows are all branded, so they would know whose cows. The summer area that they would put the cows to was 23 miles away. So they herded the cattle, so we always went out and helped them. That's why I got to ride horses, which I'm still not probably that good at, but we'd help them move the cattle out to the summer grazing, which was a higher elevation, and so they'd have more grass, and then they'd bring them back in the early fall, and we'd help them with that too. So that was always fun, moving all the cattle.
It's actually surprising that when you talk about out BC, you talked only about your lake, the conservation side of things, but that was only the summer gig. It was the winter gig. You were a ski bum and you were a ski medic.
Well, I wasn't a ski patrol.
Ski patrol.
I was never really classified as a ski bum because the true ski bum has to go on unemployment.
Fair.
So I always got paid because I had so much. I think the first winter I had enough money because I was laid off. But once I worked with Ducks Unlimited, we couldn't work much past first or second week of December because it was frozen. So I'd go home to Ontario for a couple weeks, and then the 1st of January I'd come back. In the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, I could ski for 3 months, but I had so much overtime because I'd work lots of times. We work 7 days a week. 12, 14-hour days because that's the machinery is working that. So I'd have so much overtime, they'd keep paying me January, February, and March, and then they'd call me back up and say, oh, you got to come back to work in the end of March. Then I got the middle of March. Then I got the 1st of March, and but still I'd have a couple months skiing. And I always went down to Rossland, BC, Red Mountain. It was great skiing. There'd be 40, 50 guys, 3 or 4 girls that would, be out there every day skiing. Nancy Green came from there, so I got to meet her brothers and her coach, Butch Boudre. And
She's an Olympian skier.
Yeah, Nancy Green. Everything around Rossland's Nancy Green Parkway, Nancy Green Highway.
Okay.
She was Olympian probably in the 70s or 60s, late 60s. And she was downhill, and I think she did all of them, slalom. But this Butch Boudre, who was her coach, the guys that were all there skiing, it was $10 for a lesson for the whole day. And he'd teach you how to ski. And, he knew how to ski. He was overweight, drank, smoked. And he had 210s, 215 length skis, and he could just go down the moguls like he was going down an elevator. And that was, the goal was to ski the bumps, and they were big bumps like you're going down an elevator. So once you got to that, then you knew how to ski.
Okay.
And it took you 2 or 3 months to learn that. Your whole upper body wouldn't move. It's just your bottom and your legs, and they'd be bouncing around. The national ski team came there. All the crazy Canucks were there. You'd run into them in the ski hall. They'd come in I think when their season was just about over, they'd come there.
And the crazy Canucks are who?
Oh, Ken Reed, Irving, I can't remember all their names.
They were like a performance.
No,
ski
they were all
team?
downhillers, and Podborski, who won Ken Reed. Podborski was one of them. There's about 4 or 5 of them. They're all downhillers. They were all they were crazy. Like they would.
They got their name, rightfully so.
Yeah, they did really well back like in the 70s when they were skiing. They were winning races all over the world, and in the Olympics, they did well. But so that was nice. In the wintertime, we go down skiing for a couple months. I'd rent a house with different people and meet a lot of people, so you knew everybody in town. You come back every winter. In fact, we were just recently in Roslyn, and we asked if Murny Luchka was still there. He was a crazy blonde. I don't know what he was. He could have been Ukrainian or something. And he had this wild blonde hair, and he's still there.
Oh, yeah.
Driving.
People knew about him.
Yeah, I says, Murny around? Oh, yeah, crazy Murny's still here.
50 years later.
50 years later, he was had bought a tow truck. And so he was the local
tow
truck operator. So.
Love that.
But it's a neat little town. So then I go back and I worked mainly Williams Lake and Kamloops. And with Kamloops, we were all over the province. I was working with the provincial engineer, and I'd sort of go and oversee the construction on the different projects. I didn't have to be there every day, but I would go out and check the progress. I stayed 2 or 3 days. We'd stay at fishing camps and little cabins out in the Chilcotin.
Cool.
Yeah, so we had fun.
And this is most of your 20s.
Pretty well in my 20s till I moved back.
And you moved back because?
My sister knew Jeannette, my wife.
My mom.
Yeah, and came home for Christmas, and my sister tried to line me up with Jeannette because there was, every New Year's Eve, there's always a dance at the Legion, I think, or some crazy, in Parkhill.
Classic.
It was the classic, all right. I said, do you want to go to this? Because Mom and Dad would always go, and they'd always try to take all their kids. And it was just sort of a fun little thing. Jeanette said no about 5 times, and I finally convinced her she better go out with me. So that was it. And then, So
that's in your early 30s, and you're back in Ontario.
I think I got married. I came back when I was 29, and we got married when I was 30 back here. So,
okay. And then when you're out in BC, you picked up stained glass, and we're doing that as well as a bit of a hobby. And then you were doing that and some surveying with Don Pearson.
Oh, that's when I got back.
When
to
you
Ontario.
came back,
Yeah, when I was out in BC, I ran into a guy that was doing stained glass. I think I took a stained glass course for a day or 2. I don't know. And there was another guy out there who was doing stained glass, and him and I bought some glass together. And I used to do like the Williams Lake craft show or something like that up in the hillside and sell names and little sun catchers and that when I probably for 3 or 4 years at least. In Williams Lake, I did some in Kamloops. So when I came back to Ontario, I had to drag all this glass back with me.
And it all fit in your truck to?
No, I bought more glass when I got back to Ontario. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, so I was doing glass when I was out in BC. So when I came back to Ontario, I met Jeannette. I thought, I'll maybe get in do more stained glass. So I did go down that first year I was back because I continued to work with Ducks Unlimited the first year I was back here. In fact, a project down in Tilbury, I supervised that. And then I applied for an actual job up in up north around Barrie in the Haliburtons, and that was Ducks Unlimited's head office for Ontario, and they were looking for an engineering technician. So I got down to I went in for one interview, and I think it's down to the last 2 or 3, and the guy who got it was actually an engineer. He's way more qualified than I ever was. I just had some experience, and like he would actually know what he's doing. I just sort of would
make it look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, sort of. Make sure the dirt was on the ground, the ducks were happy.
Yeah.
So I was more a practical guy where he actually would know what he's doing. So thank God I didn't get that job, but because it was never overly well paid, but it was you know, it's nice to help the environment and look after the waterfowl. So then to get, you know, that was the first year. Then I think when I came back, I worked because I had surveying, I worked with Don Pearson. And they had a tiling company that was working at a forest. And Jeannette and I had gotten married, and we were living in Thedford, renting a house. And Don said I don't know, Jeannette knew Don and Juliet. And Don said, you know, can you survey? So I ran up and down the fields for a year, from probably early spring till November or so, doing surveying for the tiling. And then I got in really good shape, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But I think in January I took another course that I actually could run a tiling company, or I got my Class A tiling, so I knew that water ran downhill, payday on Friday, out of the ditches. And then I thought, oh, this ain't gonna work. So my sister-in-law, Lucy, Jeanette's sister, said you should sell life insurance or work for Manulife. I said, I don't think so. I don't think I want to do that. And then for some reason, real estate came up, and so I took a real estate course and was I was doing more stained glass then, and I had a stained glass show in Windsor. It was in June, and that day I found out I had to go write my exam the day before for my real estate, and then the next day I was doing we were down at Windsor doing a craft show, because I did a few of them. I went to Ottawa, London, Windsor, you know, a couple times. And so we're down there. I still remember where I was doing stained glass, and I got my real estate license. And so that was in June of 83 or 84. I guess 84.
And there's also the story you've told me of our uncle was out there helping you at one of the stained glass shows, and it absolutely downpoured, and he looked at you and said, Doug, I think you need to get into something different.
That was in March of that year, and in fact, it was at the Elmira Maple Syrup Festival.
Okay.
And you had to be down there at 6 in the morning, 6:30. So we got up at about 4, Jim Wellington and I, and packed the K-car station wagon. This is what we had, a 82 or 81 or 84, whatever it was. It was a little K-car station wagon, so I could put my stained glass in there, and we got down there, and it was just howling, windy, and we were trying to hold. So I put the stained glass, the little booth that we had up, made it of wood, and hung all the stuff up, and the wind was blowing away, and I looked over, and somebody had put all their paintings up, and it just blew right over. So Jim was kind of holding on to the stained glass thing, and it calmed down. But Jim said, "Do you not think you should get out of this and get a better job?" So yeah, so I think I took stained glass course, a real estate course, but probably about 3 days after that, signed up.
You took it very seriously.
Yeah, I said that was enough of that. So I was selling iron removers for a little while when I first came back too. Jack Lazenby out of Ipperwash had said, you know, there's a lot of iron, and everybody had their own water system. There wasn't municipal water.
Yeah.
So a lot of the places that was pumping water, there would be iron in it. So Jack had this doctor from Michigan that had this iron remover, and so I sold those for 5-6 months, and it was I think he made $200 or $300 every time you sold one. It's going to take me a long time to ever support a family, so it was fun because I knocked on doors.
Got to get your name
all over the place. I was in like every Port Franks, Ipperwash, where they had their own water. Like in Grand Bend, they did have municipal water right in Grand Bend. But once you got outside of Grand Bend, they were all on wells. And there was a lot of iron because of the sand around Port Franks, Ipperwash. So I knocked on all those doors trying to sell them iron removers. I thought, oh, this is easy. We can sell them an iron remover, maybe we can sell them a house.
Yeah.
So
Let's see.
that'd be in '83, and then in '84 I got into real estate.